NASCAR is old, like very old. It's been part of this world for 75 years or more than 27,000 days and counting. To give you an idea on how old this sport is, when it was founded, Queen Elizabeth wasn't a queen and the US only had 48 states. Simply put, NASCAR has been here for a long time, and over those 75 years, certain days have changed the sport forever. So let's take a look at 13 days that changed NASCAR forever. Number 13, May 9th, 2007. Dale Earnhardt Jr. was and still is considered NASCAR's favorite son, or more specifically, NASCAR's Jesus. For the first 6 full seasons of his Cup career beginning in 2000, Jr. drove for his father's team, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. Unfortunately, following the death of his father, Jr.'s stepmom, Teresa Earnhardt, took control over the company, and many fans wanted to see the company and specifically the team and Jr. succeed. Unfortunately, in the off-season of 2006, Dale Jr. and Teresa were in a public family feud over who should have control over the company. Now you would think, considering Dale Sr. built DEI for his son, and that Jr. would continue the family tradition, and that Jr. was the most successful driver at the team, and that 99% of all sponsors wanted to be connected with Jr., you would think that he would take control. Unfortunately, Teresa is one of many things, but one thing she is for sure is, well, stupid. Just very, very dumb. Knowing that he was not going to get control, Dale Jr. held a press conference announcing he would leave DEI on May 9th, 2007 at the end of the season for Hendrick Motorsports the following year. Jr. would go on to win 9 more times for Hendrick, including another Daytona 500, while DEI would close its doors at the end of 2008, lasting just 1 year without Jr. Number 12, February 22nd, 1959. During his teenage years, NASCAR was going through a lot of changes, but Bill Francesa needed to have the track that was the biggest, best, and most important one of all. So he decided to build the Daytona International Speedway, not too far away from NASCAR headquarters, to create at this time this unfathomable 2.5-mile 31-degree bank track. It broke ground on November 25th, 1957 and was opened on February 22nd, 1959 for the first 500-mile NASCAR International Sweepstakes at Daytona, otherwise known as the Daytona 500, which will end up being the biggest race in stock car racing. The race would end Hollywood style in a photo finish that would take 3 days to determine the winner, which was Lee Petty. This kicked off a now 60-plus year tradition in what has become one of the biggest sporting events in America. Number 11, January 10th, 1971. In the first 22 years of NASCAR, the sport was viewed as organized but never had a big trajectory. Races were just held with not much money in the prize pool and raced at tracks that had the infrastructure that was more built in a cow farm than an actual racetrack. But in 1971, tobacco giant R.J. Reynolds wanted to be involved in big business with NASCAR. When Congress banned television advertising of cigarettes via the Public Health Cigarette Smoking Act, tobacco companies began to sponsor sporting events as a way to spend their excess advertising dollars. The Reynolds Company started spending a large amount of its advertising budget in auto racing starting in 1971. Thus, for that year, it would become the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. The tobacco company saw a major potential advertising base that could offset the loss of television commercials. The following year, the schedule was reduced from 48 to 31 races, abandoning outpost parts of the country to concentrate on a streamlined national schedule that emphasized big events and a year-long march towards a driving championship. Races on dirt tracks and on ovals shorter than 250 miles were removed and transferred to the short-lived NASCAR Grand National East Series, and the remaining races had a minimum prize money of $30,000. On top of that, Winston spent millions into improving speedways from the biggest tracks to the smallest. Red and white, which were Winston's colors, painted all over super speedways around America, walls, buildings, adding spice to the tracks that had fallen on hard times. Billboards and other signage promoting races went up in communities near racetracks. Purses at Cup Series tracks grew, and RJR added incentives, boosting season-end points money and designing programs like the Winston Million and the All-Star Race. To put it simply, Winston helped give NASCAR a major boost in popularity. Number 10, November 18th, 1990. In the early development years of NASCAR on pit road, safety was basically non-existent. You could literally wear anything and be anyone to be on pit road. And for the drivers, the whole premise was to get in and out of pit road as fast as possible, even if it meant driving like a crazed lunatic. Unfortunately, on this day at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Bill Elliott had led 94 of the 328 laps that make up the Atlanta Journal 500, the most of any driver. He was in firm control over the race with just 30 laps to go when the caution came out for a crash in turn 4. With the yellow flag flying, the field came from what was expected to be their final pit stops of the day. Elliott hit his pit wall on the nose, and his team, who weeks earlier had won the annual pit crew competition at Rockingham, leaped into action. Mike Rich rounded the back end of the number 9 Ford, dropped to his knees, and went to work changing the right rear tire. Behind him, Ricky Rudd was hustling his car down pit road trying to get to his pit stall, located in front of Elliott's as fast as he could. However, as he tried to slow down, the rear wheels of his Chevrolet locked up under braking, sending his car spinning and out of control towards Elliott's stationary car. Mike Rich was working with his air wrench to remove the lug nuts from the right rear wheel when he had his back to the traffic. He never saw Rudd's car coming. Rudd's out-of-control car spun backwards, slamming into the right rear of the number 9 car, pinning Rich between the two cars. Rich would eventually be pronounced dead at a local hospital. This event would lead to incredible changes in the sport with the sanctioning body. Pit crews now treated with care, equipped with fire retardant suits, helmets, extra padding, and on top of that, NASCAR implementing a pit road speed limit of 45 miles an hour or slower and other safety enhancements that are still in use today. Number 9, January 21st, 2004. In August 1974, NASCAR President Bill France Jr. asked series publicist Bill Latford to design a point system with equal points being awarded for all races regardless of length or prize money. This system ensured that the top drivers would have to compete in all the races in order to become the series champion. This would end up being the most popular way NASCAR crowned its champion. Whoever had the most points at the end of the season was the guy on top. However, in the offseason of 2003, with new sponsor Nextel Communications replacing Winston, the newly appointed CEO of NASCAR, Brian France, had been toying with the idea of modifying the point system and introducing a playoff format similar to the Hooters Cup Series in the 90s in order to make the second half more competitive and increase television ratings. So on this day, NASCAR announced that they would break the season into 2 parts, a 26 regular season and a 10 race playoff season. The top 10 in points at the end of 26 races have their points reset to 2,000 with bonus points respectively. Then, whoever had the most points at the end of 10 races would be the champion. This change caused a major rift with fans and drivers. Some liked it, but a lot hated it. But hey, it can't be that bad. I'm sure NASCAR will figure it out and make it right. Right? Number 8, February 9th, 2016. In the beginning years of the Gen 6 car, teams were beginning to become more and more unstable, and the teams were involved in racing week after week wanted to have more income so that if they sold their team, they could make money instead of getting chump change. So with the creation of the Race Team Alliance founded 2 years earlier, helped with NASCAR create the charter system. Think of it like franchises in the NFL, which guarantees these teams a spot in every single cup race and guaranteed prize money. It has been controversial and almost hated universally by fans because while it does help the teams currently in the charter system, it basically almost eliminates any chance of any new team unless they are very, very rich. It has forever changed how NASCAR teams are created and operated, and even though things may look bleak for its next agreement, I think it's safe to say that the charter system is here to stay. Number 7, September 13th, 2003. Bill France Jr. had been at the helm of NASCAR since 1972, being a huge part of bringing NASCAR from a southern sport to a national sport and making it the second most watched sport in America behind the NFL. But at the turn of the millennium, Little Bill's health was a main issue when he was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1999. While his cancer went into remission later, he described it as it was time for someone else to take over. Keeping it in the family name, it was announced that Brian France would take over as the new CEO of NASCAR, forever altering NASCAR from that point onwards, as he was the reason for all the changes to NASCAR's foundation, to how races were proceeded, to how NASCAR crowned a champion, to manipulating races, to completely the sport over. But don't worry, he was able to get it under control and help the sport get back on top. Right? No, the he didn't. Number 6, August 5th, 2018. 2018 was a bad year for NASCAR. TV ratings and attendance were the lowest it's been, boring racing, and overall nothing was positive to say about the sport. Until that summer day in Watkins Glen when NASCAR's newest most popular driver Chase Elliott finally got his first Cup Series win. It was a feel-good moment and something NASCAR fans could finally cheer about together. Now what was the CEO of NASCAR doing? Getting arrested! Like what the bro? How do you get arrested for DUI when you're the CEO of a driving sport? Like, what were you thinking? Anyways, while NASCAR was having its best moment of the year, our then CEO was pulled over in Sag Harbor, New York for driving through a stop sign and subsequently arrested for DUI and possession of oxycodone. France later pleaded guilty to 1-count misdemeanor DUI on June 7, 2019. His leave of absence officially ended in February 2019 when interim head of NASCAR Jim France permanently took over as chairman and CEO of the company. This has been an underrated what if in the sport. If Brian France was still in charge, would we see NASCAR do the things they've been doing, like going to the LA Coliseum, changing the schedule, going to new markets like COTA and Chicago? Now, although this moment was really bad to go through at first, it may have been a really good and positive thing for the sport down the line. Number 5, May 5th, 2021. The introduction of the next-gen car. This car completely changed the landscape of NASCAR as we know it. Before the next-gen car, cars were built in shop. Chassis, teams with fabricators, it became an arms race of who had the biggest checkbook. NASCAR and the teams wanted to change that, so with the next-gen car, the series became spec. Almost everything became purchased out of shop through a vendor's list, as a way to level the playing field and create more parity. This car has changed a fundamental aspect of how NASCAR operates with this car, as the car is built for the future, with new introductions implemented in the next-gen car that has never been used earlier and built with the potential for hybrid engines with electric power be implemented as well. Number 4, January 10th, 1972. After serving as vice president under Bill France Sr., Bill France Jr. became the president of NASCAR. It was a prominent part of taking NASCAR from a southern sport to a national sport, from striking a deal with Winston Cigarettes for them to become the series sponsor, to continuing his father's legacy by fostering growth of the Daytona 500, as well as other races like the Daytona 200 motorcycle race and expanding the Rolex 24 at Daytona, to being part of striking a deal with CBS Sports to broadcast the first ever live flag-to-flag race, the 1979 Daytona 500, leading to NASCAR being known across America. Simply put, without France Jr., the entire country would probably not know NASCAR. Number 3, May 3rd, 1987. By the late 1980s, NASCAR was steadily growing in popularity, but the sport as a whole nearly came to an end at Talladega in the 1987 Winston 500. See, in that era, there was no such thing as restrictor plates, so cars at Daytona and especially Talladega were easily capable of traveling over 210 miles an hour. On the 21st lap of the race, Bobby Allison lost his engine with pieces of engine cutting his right rear tire at speeds around 210. The car turned backwards and went airborne, hitting the wall and tearing down a wide stretch of protective fencing to protect fans from accidents. 4 fans were reported to be injured, and according to reports, 1 woman lost an eye. Many people in the sport said that if that car had gone into the stands, it could have very well likely ended NASCAR, much like the 1955 Le Mans disaster, which nearly ended motorsports as a whole in Europe. Luckily, the car stayed on the racetrack and no one was killed. NASCAR did institute safety changes by implementing the restrictor plate to slow the cars down, a safety tool that had been in use until 2019 when it was replaced with tapered spacers. But it could have been a few inches from disaster, and if NASCAR wasn't lucky, it could have been the end of the sport as we know it. Number 2, February 18th, 1979. The 21st annual Daytona 500 will be one of the most important races in NASCAR history. For a portion in the mid-70s, NASCAR would get tastes of TV exposure, but is usually under 30-minute packaged pre-taped segments as part of ABC's Wide World of Sports or the CBS Sports Spectacular. And in terms of media exposure, NASCAR was almost non-existent in that landscape. If they even got a little block on the newspaper, it was considered a victory, but NASCAR wanted more. So they were able to partner with CBS Sports with major help from Ken Squire to host the first ever live flag-to-flag race of the Daytona 500. When February 18th, 1979 came, it was the perfect timing because while the race was about to begin, the entire Northeast was snowed in a major snowstorm from Jacksonville to Maine. And remember, this is 1979, no TikTok, internet, and YouTube. The only thing you had for entertainment was 3 channels for sports, CBS, NBC, and ABC. Obviously, with America watching, we know what would happen. This was a national moment. Everyone was talking about the race and the fight. It was all over news reports, newspapers, and it was NASCAR's first water cooler moment. This race put NASCAR on the map, and many view this as NASCAR's most important race. And finally, number 1, February 18th, 2001. Now let's be honest, we all knew this was going to be number 1. It's a day that no NASCAR fan will ever forget. A day known as Black Sunday, and will go down as the day NASCAR changed forever. It was the first race of the 2001 NASCAR Cup Series season and of course starts off with the Daytona 500, NASCAR's biggest race. It was a season that was supposed to be great and started off fantastic. The first 499 miles had some of the most exciting and intense racing up to that point. Many said that it would have been one of the greatest Daytona 500s ever. In the final laps of the race, the top three ran as such. Michael Waltrip, a journeyman who had never won in 462 starts, leading the race to try and earn his first career win. In second place, his teammate Dale Earnhardt Jr. tucked right behind. And in third place was the man in black, the Intimidator, the greatest driver in NASCAR history probably, 7-time champion Dale Earnhardt in third. In an ironic and bizarre twist, Earnhardt, who only knew how to drive on the offense, was suddenly playing defense, protecting his son and his best friend in cars that he owned, blocking every move he can to ensure those two would finish the race first and second. However, on the final lap, Sterling Marlin and Ken Strader jumped Dale entering the final corner. Earnhardt tried to block one more time, but it was one time too many. His black number 3 Chevrolet cuts down before darting back up the track, collecting Ken Strader and colliding head-on with the wall at 180 miles per hour. His drivers Waltrip and Jr. would go on to finish 1 and 2. Waltrip was filled with joy knowing he made his best friend proud and was waiting for Dale to give him a hug. But while Waltrip was waiting in joy, Dale Jr. was running in a panic to see his father because Earnhardt Sr. was hurt. He was given CPR and had to be cut from the car and was taken directly to the Halifax Medical Center. When at 5:16 p.m., NASCAR's version of Michael Jordan, probably one of the greatest drivers in the sport, Dale Earnhardt, was dead at the age of 49. He died instantly from the crash due to blunt force trauma. His death sent shockwaves around the sports world and left a void in the sport that will never be filled and has truly changed NASCAR forever. However, Dale didn't die in vain. Despite all of his accomplishments in his sport, his greatest legacy is the advances in safety since that day, from mandating the Hans device, having safer barriers at every track any of the top 3 series competes at, to even building a new car in the car of tomorrow and again in the Gen 6 car and now the next gen. And despite countless spectacular crashes that have happened since February 18, 2001, not a single driver has died in any of NASCAR's top 3 divisions since the 2001 Daytona 500. It's just unfortunate that for so many drivers to live, the greatest one to ever do it had to give up his life to make it happen. And that is the list for the 13 days that changed NASCAR forever. What do you think about this video? Did you agree with this list? If not, let me know what do you think are the most important days of the sport in the comment section down below. Until next time, my name is Jet. Thanks for watching.